So if you watched part one of this series of videos, you'll have seen me make part one just here. Now, in this video, I'm not going to make part two, but I'm actually going to skip on to part four because it gives you an interesting insight into one of the efficient ways that you can use SketchUp. So if we look here, the reason why I'm doing this is because part four has a lot of details in common with part one. So it has this 250 here, it has these little feet at the side that are 30 wide, it has this height here of 300. So this detail right here is exactly the same as the detail here at the bottom. It just isn't as tall. So how can we use what we've already drawn to help us draw the next thing? So I'm going to remember that height of 391, and then I'm going to go back over here. And I have my component, which I drew last time. And for the purposes of this, I'm going to just delete everything else. Get rid of that. And I'm going to make a copy of this. And you know how to make a copy already, is by taking your move tool, holding down hitting the option key, and then just dragging it and moving it across. I now have a copy of that same component. Okay, and since these details are identical to each other, I can, in theory, make edits to this component and just leave this other stuff behind. Now you've seen in a previous video when I pull through to the thickness, to exactly the thickness of the piece, that the material will disappear. So that's exactly what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to double click and I'm going to take a guideline using my tape measure tool from here, and remember what we I need to zoom in a bit closer. Remember, we need to push this up by 391, which is the distance of which is the height of part 4. So if I now draw a line across using that guideline as my guide, I've now split that surface into two, which means that I can take my push-pull tool, push this down, and there now I have my part. Except for there's a problem, because that was a copy of the same component, it's happened to the previous one. So how do I fix that? Okay, let's go back a few steps. Nice thing about SketchUp is that you can always do Command Z and get back to where you were before. I'll always advise that rather than trying to draw things again. So how do I fix the problem? How do I make it so that I can edit this one without those edits happening on this one? Well, it's very easy. And what I'm going to do is first select it, then I'm going to hold down the control button, and this menu appears, and what I need to do is make this component unique. In other words, I'm breaking the connection between this and this. Now they still look the same, except for now if I edit this one, the edits won't appear on this one, which is really good. Right, so let's do it again. Double click so we can edit. Zoom right in down here so I can use my tape measure tool to drag a guideline. I'm going to type in my distance, 391, and it should appear up there. Take my pencil tool, use my guideline to draw an accurate line going across there, and then the push-pull tool, I'm going to push through until that happens, and then that means that disappears. Now when I'm finished editing my component, I just click to one side and then it goes back to normal, and then I have part 1, that's this one, and I also now have part 4 without having to do really much work at all.